This is Josh Friedman, joined by Jesus and Maria Angel. We are in La Parada, Colombia, on the Colombian side of the Colombian-Venezuelan border. More than 6 years after our interview, a widely viewed interview, we've come back to not only reflect upon and have Maria Angel reflect upon her memories from here, but to look into the situation here on the border. Has the situation with trafficking, prostitution, organized crime, general criminal activity, has that situation improved at all, or is it still as it was prior? And we have a little twist in that now a few days or several days have passed since the United States' capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. So on that occasion, Jesus and I have been also exploring people's sentiments in the region, particularly Venezuelans, with respect to the broader political situation. But here we're going to delve into the situation as it was and as it is now. And I look forward to getting Maria Angel and Jesus' thoughts, as well as the thoughts of people elsewhere, other people here in La Parada. On and around the border here, a theme that we've been coming across is hope. Jesus, you yourself have expressed hope in the aftermath of the capture of Nicolas Maduro, and similarly, some of the Venezuelans that we've spoken to have also expressed that right now there's a sense of hope for them and for the country. So I would like to ask you, Maria Angel, personally, right now, do you have a sense of hope? And then also, do you have a sense of hope for the overall situation in Venezuela, as well as now that you're back in La Parada briefly? Do you have a sense of hope for the situation here in La Parada?
No, todo está cambiado, ya no hay mujeres, me alegro mucho que todo esté cambiado, que todo esté mejor. Y bueno, agradecida con Dios porque Dios ha sido bueno conmigo.
Okay. Everything is changed now. It's not the same anymore as it was before. There are no girls on the street as they were before. I was remembering and commenting to her that I remember that every time I came to this place, there were lots of girls approaching me, offering me their services openly at whichever time of the day. They didn't care about that. But right now I've been here for 3 or 4 days and that hasn't happened not even once. I haven't seen a single girl that even looks like one of them. So that's mainly what she says. Everything is changed. That apparently that disappeared, and she's glad to know that. And she's glad to know that that's not going on here anymore. And of course, personally, she's glad she doesn't have to do that anymore.
You're saying that they were approaching you personally, offering your service.
I remember, of course, yes.
But Maria Angel herself notices that right now there are pretty much none of those girls walking around, whereas in the past they were in the middle of the day walking around.
Exactly, yes.
Very visible.
No, ya todo está solo, todo está cambiado, muy cambiado, hasta los menos, ¿cómo se dice?
Hay menos negocio.
Menos negocio.
No, that's not going on anymore around here. Every time I came here, I've never seen anything like that happening. So fortunately, that I consider that disappeared. But also there's less people, there's less stores or businesses open. So that's what I've seen.
All right, Joe, can you introduce yourself, please?
Sure. All right. My name is Joe Goderre. I'm Canadian. I've lived here in Colombia since 2010, so about 16 years now. What I do is I have an English institute. We offer language services, so we teach people English, but we also offer translation, interpretation services, as well as some other educational services like a learning platform, etc. But one of the reasons why I have maybe a little more than the average knowledge in regards to this whole situation is thanks to the experience that I've had over the last 16 years working in the interpretation field because just like, my work with you, Josh, I've had the pleasure to work with a lot of different NGOs, many different journalists and entities from all over, work with different government agencies, with the police, with different delegates from other countries that have needed translation services. And since I live right here in the border and I have a company and we're well known and respected for the service that we provide here in the area, well, we, just you were a witness to that yesterday. I was recommended to some delegates from the BBC to help them with some interpretation. So what happens is one gets insider information per se. Like I said yesterday, the interview was on Thursday, I believe. I was supporting the BBC with an interview with the defense minister. So, you have that, that is a source of information. I went to the Catatumbo area with the delegates of the Nobel Peace Prize when Santos, the ex-president of Colombia, was awarded the Peace Prize, and they wanted to go into Catatumbo to do a story about the peace what used to happen in the region, etc. Just living here too, when you live here, you interact with Venezuelans and people here. So I saw the huge migration crisis with the wave of people coming across in 2000 and 2018, 2019. I saw the walkers firsthand when you were here the last time. Random Wednesday or whatever we saw a whole bunch of group of walkers, and so I've been able to see this stuff happen and all of this unfold before my eyes, plus having the privilege of working with a number of different organizations and agencies, specifically trying to get information and resolve the problem with the migrants. So that's given me a bit of a context that allows me to be able to understand exactly more or a little bit better what's going on here.
El Centro, in the center of Cucuta, Colombia. We are joined by, can you please say your name?
¿Cómo te llamas?
Lorena Bentancur.
Where are you from, Lorena?
Barquisimeto, Estado Lara, Venezuela.
And when did you come to Colombia and why?
¿Cuándo viniste a Colombia y por qué?
Amor, tengo 6 meses, tengo 3 meses trabajando acá. Y pues por la situación de mis hijos y todo eso.
I've been here for 6 months. I've been working here for 3 months, and I came here because of the situation with my son.
What is your financial situation in Venezuela? Can you explain?
¿Cómo era su situación financiera en Venezuela? ¿Nos puede explicar eso?
Mal, bastante mal. O sea, estudiaba, pero no pude terminar los estudios.
Yeah, it was really bad. I was studying, but I couldn't finish my studies.
How old are you?
¿Cuántos años tienes?
23.
23.
Here you work as a dancer. Do you also sell your body? Can you please share what you do here?
Sexual worker.
Okay, and you're mostly providing sexual services here in this club, or do you do it elsewhere also?
Afuera.
No, mayormente acá. Y es muy peligroso.
Yeah, normally here because it's pretty dangerous.
And did you ever work in La Parada or another part of this area, or have you only worked in the center of Cucuta?
Solamente acá en Cucuta.
Yeah, just here in Cucuta.
And do you just provide sexual services here in person in the center, or have you also done webcam or some other online service like OnlyFans?
En Tango.
Yeah, webcam in an application called Tango.
And can you share how much you're making about per month now or when you were doing webcam?
No, pues es que se fue hace tiempo y en realidad tenía que darle un porcentaje al dueño de la cuenta. Entonces, pues no era mucho, o sea, muchísimo, ¿no? Y pues acá hay días buenos, días malos y pues hay semanas que hay días que uno no se va sin nada, como hay días que sí uno hace.
So online in the webcam, business. That was a while ago, but I had to basically give a commission to the person who was the owner of the account. So I wasn't able to really make a lot there and here. There are good days and bad days. Some days when I come home and there's with nothing, and other days, they're pretty good.
Is it safe for you to work here? Have you been threatened at all? Have you had to deal with any trafficking or issues related to pimping?
Obvio.
En cuanto a tráfico de gente o en cuanto de pronto hombres como el pimp, ¿qué tipo de problemas?
O sea, problemas así en la pieza, que hay hombres que quieren o maltratarte o obligarte a algo que no se debe hacer, cosas así.
Yeah, no problems with pimps or human trafficking, but problem with some of the men when they're here, when they want to like force you to do something that you're not willing to do. So I've had that kind of problem.
What about other girls here? Are they all Venezuelan? Are they mostly Venezuelan? Can you share who are
De las chicas que están aquí, generalmente la mayoría son venezolanas o colombianas.
Sí. Sí, la mayoría son venezolanos.
Yeah, the majority are Venezuelan.
And why is that?
¿Y por qué es?
¿Ah?
¿Y por qué?
Pues amor por la situación. Por la situación de nuestro país, obvio. O sea, todas tenemos responsabilidades, hijos, gastos.
Babe, because of the situation in Venezuela. Because, we all have responsibilities, we have expenses and stuff like that. We have kids and we need to make money.
Are you making enough money here to support your family back home? And if you can't share how much you're making, then can you tell us a little bit about what the money you make here can go toward?
Entonces, en cuanto cómo estás apoyando a su familia o digamos cómo ganas. En ese sentido, tú puedes compartir cuánto ganas, o al menos si no te sientes cómodo así, a decir con lo que ganas aquí, ¿qué alcanzas a hacer?
Pues en realidad, pues lo que uno gana acá, sí, como te dije, hay días buenos, días malos, pero como todo, sí es bueno, pero no, yo tengo 3 hijos, tengo mi mamá en Venezuela, mi papá y todo eso, pues la situación es crítica en nuestro país, ¿sí me entiendes? Entonces, sí se gana, pero así como se gana, se gasta, y pues días buenos, días malos, y todo es difícil. Igual la situación acá tampoco es que sea muy buena, tampoco.
So what can I say? Like there are good days and there are bad days. I've got 3 kids plus my mom back in Venezuela. So, I have to work. There's good days, there's bad days, I'm able to get by and meet my needs. But like I said, there's good days and there's bad days. And, the situation in Venezuela is pretty bad. And the situation here is not that much. It's not that it's all that great, but, that's the way it is.
So you came here voluntarily, right? You were not forced or pressured into working here and providing sex services.
Entonces tú no estás aquí obligada, nadie obligó a trabajar aquí en esto.
No, en realidad no. O sea, como que por voluntad propia, pues por la necesidad de mi país y todo eso, la situación.
No, really nobody forced me to be here. It's the situation in my country.
And that's the case for the other girls working here. Do you know, did they choose, they came voluntarily to work here? Sí, mayormente sí, o sea, o sea, este lugar todo es como que porque uno quiera, por voluntad propia, no porque te obliguen, o sea, aquí no es así. O sea, aquí en este lugar, no sé.
Pero de Venezuela, que las mismas vienen para las mismas.
No, claro, he escuchado que se las ha traído obligadas, que la ponen.
Me refiero de que ellas vinieron por la misma razón, por la problema, la situación. Esa ha traído.
La mayoría que se han venido engañadas, que las han, mejor dicho, o sea, las han puesto como esclavas sexuales, pues, ¿sí me entiendes? Le quitan todo, tienen que pagar multas, todas esas cosas.
So yeah, the majority of girls are just like me. They've come here on their own free will. And the majority of them are also here because of the situation, because of the economic situation in Venezuela. Although there are cases of girls who have been misled or have been caught in this human trafficking where they've been given fines or they have their documents taken or different things like that. But, in general, the other girls are here just like me because they're forced to because of the situation in Venezuela.
Do you have hope that the situation in Venezuela will improve? And do you want to move back to Venezuela? Or do you want to continue living and working in Colombia or possibly move somewhere else?
Claro, sí, obvio. Tengo esperanza y fe de que todo va a cambiar. Ojalá.
Yeah, I've got faith that everything's going to change, and I hope that it does.
So on camera, she wasn't totally forthcoming with regard to the trafficking issue, but after we turned off the camera, we asked her a bit more about that. And what did she say?
Well, first, she recognized that it does exist here, and it is also something that she knows people firsthand that have been victims of that. She explained a little bit of the dynamic and how it works. Basically, what they do is convince girls that they're going to go to a certain place to be able to work, and then when they get there, the conditions are different. Meaning, she explained that what they do is sometimes they tell the people like, yeah, you're going to make all this amount of money. We'll pay for your passport. We'll pay for your clothes. We'll buy even a phone. We'll do a lot of things with the idea of trying to sell you on the idea. Then once you get there, then you're forced to pay a lot of things. Like they charge you. There are fines. There are many, many different like goals that you basically have to work to meet to pay for those things. And then at the end of the day, there's not a lot of money left for the girl. And they're forced to be there because the person that brought them there with a commitment. So these girls are basically told, one thing or sold one thing, and then when they get there, the reality is another. And when we asked her about who these people were that are doing this, these cartels or gangs or organizations, she said in general they were Venezuelans. Their own Venezuelans that basically was cheating them or was telling them what one thing and then obviously providing or a different service. So that was a little bit of what she was able to share with us off camera.
And she shared that one friend of hers or one girl that she knew, she specifically was aware that she ended up trafficked, and I think she described her as somewhat of a sex slave. What did she say about her?
Yeah, exactly. So she was brought there under the premise that she was going to be able to make a lot of money. She went to, I think she mentioned Lima, Peru. But once she got there, her passport was taken away, and then she had all these high expenses that she was forced to pay living there. And that basically, as she expressed it, made her into a sex slave because she was forced to do the work to be able to pay her per diem there to be able to survive. And that the goals or the basically what they were asking for her to have to pay on a daily basis, made it very difficult for her to actually make a living other than working to pay these guys or the establishment where she's working.
And she mentioned that Venezuelan girls are being trafficked to different locations around Latin America and the Caribbean, right?
Yeah, she said, the idea was to offer them a way out or to be able to offer them something that would look really nice. So they would go not to here, to Cucuta, which is not necessarily a place where they would get these girls to come, but other places that are a little bit more attractive and supposedly are offering better opportunities for these girls when in essence they're being brought there in order to have to be able to work just to survive.
For added context, I needed to pay Lorena her standard rate in order to get her to agree to the interview. So I paid her 80,000 pesos for 20 minutes of her time. And then I also need to pay 20,000 pesos to use the room in which we recorded it. And because my interpreter Joe was there with me, that counted as having another person, or you might say a threesome. So I had to pay an additional 20,000 for Joe to be in the room. So it was 80,000 pesos plus 40,000, 120,000 pesos total. and that came out to about $30 to $35. Today we are in Villa del Rosario, Colombia, between Cucuta and La Parada, not too far from the Venezuelan border. Thank you very much for joining us. Can you please tell us your name and briefly introduce yourself?
¿Cómo te llamas? Y por favor, preséntate.
Hola, mi nombre es Cherry, tengo 25 años y soy venezolana.
My name is Cheryl. I'm 25 years old and I'm Venezuelan.
Cherry, how long have you been living here in Colombia?
Aquí viviendo en Colombia llevo 6 meses.
I've been here for 6 months.
And where are you from in Venezuela, and why did you decide to move to Colombia?
Del estado Aragua, y decidí venirme para acá porque la situación allá se puso muy complicada, porque no había trabajo, porque no se conseguían alimentos.
So I was from the Aragua state, and I came here because the situation there was really difficult. You can't find work. There's, everything's very expensive, and plus there's not a lot of food that you can find.
And what have you been doing since you left?
Hoy en día soy webcam, trabajo en páginas online.
Nowadays I work as a webcam model. I work for different websites online.
Can you explain what those websites are and what exactly you do on these webcam sites?
Esas páginas, hay páginas públicas y páginas privadas. Yo comencé principalmente con páginas privadas, fue porque una amiga me recomendó como trabajar en eso, ya que en el restaurante que estábamos no nos pagaba bien, yo necesitaba ayudar a mi papá, entonces necesitaba otra fuente de ingreso. Trabajé en streaming, en Jasmine y Tango.
So the websites, there's 2 kinds of websites. There's private and public websites. So I started working in the private websites because, as I said, the restaurant that I was working at wasn't paying enough, and I needed to help my dad economically, my family. So I decided to start working there because somebody told me that a friend of mine said that she was working there and doing that. So I started working in websites like or the app Tango, or websites like Streaming and Jasmine.
Bueno, en esas páginas llega de todo tipo de personas muy amables, personas muy crueles, la verdad, con las personas que están detrás de la pantalla, porque a veces piden cosas que, ejemplo, yo no haría, ni me gustaría hacer, ni que ninguna persona o ninguna mujer lo hiciera.
And you can find all kinds of different people on the websites of the users on the other side of the screen. Some people are very nice and very kind and polite with one, but at the same time, there's other people that are really cruel or very mean and, ask one to do things that I wouldn't want to do and really nobody would want to do.
Por ejemplo, hay mujeres que les piden que se metan la mano completa, que se metan objetos que pueden ser, ¿cómo se dice?, peligrosos, con tal de una suma de dinero.
So there are some guys that will ask girls to do things like put their whole fist in them or to insert other objects into them. And they're asking you to do that just for a certain price for them to pay for you to do that.
Are these all sexual work sites, or are some of them you're just chatting with the guys or whoever's on the other end?
Bueno, Tango es una aplicación que yo uso, es más de interacción. Pero hoy en día es una página que ya no es rentable, que ya lo que uno se hace en una semana son $30, $40, pues que al cambio, como necesitamos intermediarios, siempre baja mucho.
So I used to work at Tango, and in that site, you work and you get paid, but unfortunately it's not that feasible anymore. Because now, you might work the whole week and you just get $30 or something like that. Plus, you need to pay the intermediaries to get that money.
Oh, why is it that it's not feasible anymore? And then who are these intermediaries?
¿Cómo se dice? Las páginas, no, los estudios crean las páginas. A veces uno puede trabajar de casa, pero uno tiene que tener un buen teléfono para poder tener una buena imagen, que no todas, por ejemplo, a mí desde el mes pasado se me dañó el teléfono, pues lo estaba utilizando hace una semana, lo mandé a arreglar y pues ahorita por el momento no tengo teléfono, entonces me toca ir al estudio, gastar pasaje y eso porque no lo puedo hacer desde casa.
So in the studios, or like basically the thing is that, in these websites, like you're doing this direct contact with the user through your phone. If you're using Tango, but a month ago I lost, or my phone got damaged, and I sent it to get fixed. But so in the meantime, I have to go to the studio and work there.
Can you explain what the studio is and who is there and how common is this around here?
Yeah, I forgot to mention about the app. She was saying too that when you get that money, you need to pay somebody to.
Ellos le quitan a uno el 60%. A veces te exigen, si tú no quieres hacer algo, pues te exigen que lo hagas para ellos también, porque le conviene que tú recibas ese dinero, pero no miden las consecuencias. Por ejemplo, si yo falto un día, me colocan una multa de $10, $12.
So in the studios, the thing is that they take 60% of what you earn. And on top of that, sometimes they kind of push you to do things that you don't want to do because it's in their interest, because they want the customer to pay. So they want to be you to do the service. And as well is if I miss a day of work, there's a fine. It's usually about $10 or $12 if I don't go to work.
Is this mostly sex work that you're doing in the studios? And who's running these studios?
Todos los estudios tienen dueños diferentes y nosotras somos monitoreadas por personas que nos traducen, que hacen como interacciones con esos usuarios, ya que nosotras no sabemos hablar inglés o otros idiomas.
So the different studios are run by different people, but basically you've got like a monitor who's monitoring your chats and conversing with the people, because we as models most of us don't speak English or other languages, so they're doing that for us.
Were you ever involved in, and if you're not comfortable sharing, it's okay, were you ever involved in sex work prior to coming here and getting involved with this webcam and app industry?
Incluso la primera vez que yo entré al estudio, porque mi amiga me lo recomendó, yo estaba frente a una cámara, estaba con un short y una camisa cortica, así como esta, y yo decía, ¿qué hago? Porque llegó alguien como a hablarme, de paso fue como videollamada, y yo, ¿qué hago? Y entonces, menos mal que tenía una monitora mujer, porque muchas veces es hombre, entonces ella me explicaba como que haz esto, haz lo otro.
So yeah, even a quick story here that, when I first got started, the very first day, I was in front of the camera. I was kind of like camera shy. I didn't know what to do. And all of a sudden I got like a private call. And when I got this, one-on-one video call, I was like shocked and I didn't know what to do. And fortunately I had a female monitor. So, because a lot of times it's male monitors, but in this case, she talked to me and she told me, what I needed to do, because, I was clueless.
What was it that convinced you to try this out and ultimately get into the industry? Was it only the money, or were there other factors as well?
¿Qué llevó a usted a tomar la decisión de entrar en la industria? ¿Fue solo el dinero o había otros factores?
No, solo el dinero. Only money.
How common is it for Venezuelan girls and young women to get into this webcam industry now?
Es muy común, bastante común, porque la mayoría, como no tiene papeles, entonces en empresas no la aceptan, o lugares así de trabajo normal e informal, digámoslo así.
It's very common because since all of these girls, or most of these girls, don't have papers or documents to be able to formally or legally work here in Colombia, then it's really hard for them to get a job with a formal company. And this is a way for them to get work or earn money.
Do you know if it's still common? Maybe you see with other Venezuelan girls and women who've come here. Do you know if it's still common for them to get into old school, typical sex work like prostitution here, or are they now mostly the ones coming here mostly getting into webcams and apps, maybe OnlyFans, stuff like that?
Sí, yo pienso que ya ese trabajo ha quedado atrás, porque ya como conocieron el medio de online, entonces hay muchas que le han ido bien, hay otras que no le van tan bien porque esa industria es así muy irregular, digámoslo así. Incluso yo veo eso algo muy temporal, porque yo quisiera tener un negocio, no dedicarme a eso, o tener estudios para poder entrar a una buena empresa.
Yeah, it's a volatile industry. Some girls do well, other girls don't do too well. So in regards to the prostitution, it's something I think is, if people aren't doing it as much nowadays because of the online. It's so accessible for people to go out to get it online. However, the industry is now kind of like flooded, and it's not really as profitable as it was. It was up and down. And apart from that, I would like to get out of this industry and, work for myself as an independent worker, or to get some studies, like to study and be able to get a job at a company.
How much money do you typically make a month? I know it's volatile, and how does that compare to how much money Venezuelan girls are often making in this industry here?
Eso es semanal. Es semanal, en una semana uno se puede hacer, yo creo que una semana buena, $100, $120, pues normal. Una semana baja puede ser unos $30, $40 y menos el 60% que nos quitan.
So we get paid on a weekly basis. On a good week, we could say $130, like, if it was a regular good week. But it could also go down for a bad week. It could be just $30. And remember that 60% of that gets taken away.
I don't know if you've come across this at all, and maybe it's less of an issue with the webcam industry than with the more traditional sex work, but have you run into any issues with trafficking or organized crime, gangs, criminal groups with respect to the work you're doing, or are you aware of any of the other girls being affected by that?
Sí, una vez conocí una nena que trabajaba en otro estudio, porque como que esa industria muchas personas se conocen, digámoslo así, y tenía 17 años, era menor de edad.
Yeah, so I did know one girl. She worked at a different studio that we were at. But yeah, she worked over there, and she was only 17, so she was underage.
How common is it for there to be underage girls involved in this work, and what happened to her? Did some criminal group traffic her from Venezuela to here, or what happened?
Bueno, ella se vino con un grupo de amigas, había mayores y menores de edad. Entonces ellas vinieron como pensando en que iban a ganar mucho dinero en eso, pues no siempre es así. Y incluso como era menor de edad, le quitaba más porcentaje con tal de dejarla ahí.
So yeah, she came with a group of friends. Some of them were of age, others underage. All of them with the illusion or the idea that they were going to make a bunch of money, which, as I said, in this industry is not a guarantee. But at the same time, they came here, and the ones that were underage were actually paid less as well.
You said that you would like to get out of this industry and continue your studies, move into other work. How easy or how difficult is it for the Venezuelan girls and young women in this webcam industry to get out of it?
Si uno tiene como un negocio o una rentabilidad o algo fijo, sí es fácil salir.
Yeah, it depends. If you have something like a full-time job or a business or anything like that, you can get out of it. But if not, then no.
So from your understanding, are a lot of the girls who have gotten into this somewhat trapped, meaning they have to continue in this webcam industry for many years?
Sí, es como difícil buscar oportunidades por eso, por el pago, porque a veces toca cumplir unos horarios extensos, no te da rentabilidad, tú tienes que trasladar.
Yeah, it's difficult because, a lot of times, you got to find a job, or, they're very demanding, have long hours. Sometimes they want you to move, you have to move somewhere else to look for work.
So we spoke with one girl, I guess I'd call her a girl.
Emma.
She shared with us what seems to be a trend that may indicate that some of the Venezuelan girls in dire situations are moving away from physically selling their bodies in La Parada and other places around here.
Yeah, of course. It's been a transition. It's a kind of transition from selling their bodies to men, which is very risky, very dangerous, very unsafe, to just selling content. What type of content? We all know. Pictures, videos, even video calls, of themselves, showing their bodies to men in and abroad. And she talked to us. She told us, I remember yesterday, she said that that business is more profitable than the other one, and less dangerous, less risky, less unsafe.
Did she say it was more profitable?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. She told me that sometimes she could make $600 in a month. She will never do that amount in La Parada, of course. The most she can make in La Parada is maybe $150, $200. But she told me like between 600 and 800 she has made in 1 month using apps.
She said OnlyFans.
She said,
but there may be others.
OnlyFans, but she also showed me another one. I remember the name. It was Clapper, and the image of the app is 2 hands clapping.
Never heard of it, but I get the point.
Yeah, yeah.
OnlyFans is.
I do too. Yeah, of course. So, well, apparently, and according to her version, she claimed that some of her friends had decided to move into that and had left the other activity aside. So they're now selling content via website, via WhatsApp, or any other chatting application. And that was a safer way for them to make money and get profit. That's what she said yesterday. Well, she was willing to giving us that declaration, that those impressions in front of the camera. We were supposed to meet today, but then she did not continue answering our messages, unfortunately.
It seems as though many of the Venezuelan girls who may have in the past been doing traditional sex work, if I may, prostitution, are now moving into the webcam industry here in Colombia. How widespread is it that Venezuelan girls and young women are doing this webcam modeling now?
It's everywhere. And when I say it's everywhere, I mean it's everywhere, both formally and informally. Almost any neighborhood you go to, there's 1 or 2 or more, depending on the place, the zone, houses that are dedicated to that, where couples, 2 or 3 people, girls, a group of friends will rent the place and just work, can turn it into their own mini studio, or the actual formal studios where a lot of the girls enter into the industry are there. And this is so much so that, people obviously feel it and see it because it's in their communities. But it's so much so that the Colombian government has also had to make legislation to formally recognize webcam studios as actual businesses, so they could register those businesses, so they could track them, and also because for tax purposes, so that they could regulate their income and try and regulate the industry. But that the sheer amount of girls and men as well, it's not 100% women, but the majority is women, made it so that basically everybody felt the wave and everybody could see how many people were actually involved in this, so much so that the Colombian government had to act.
Who's running these studios, and are the girls being lured into this? Are some of them being pressured or even trafficked into this?
Yeah, so generally, we're talking in general, but every studio in general is independently owned and operated. So in general, we'll say the majority of studio owners are former models. So models who got into the industry, learned a bit how the dynamic of it works, how the behind the camera aspect is, and so forth. And then they see the money involved too in being able to recruit other models to work under them so that they can make money off of them. Now, traditional business model where they're charging a commission, if you will, for their earnings, we'll call it like a pyramid style, right? Where the more people they get under them, then the more commissions and the more money they can earn. But it's not a pyramid style in the sense that they're getting tricked into, something like an investment or whatnot, but it is in a sense where the more people they can get, the more models they can get in their studios, well, then the more money that they can make because they're making a percentage of the earnings of all the models that are there. And generally, the studios are a common thing because this is where girls go or guys, but in general, girls go when they don't have any experience and they don't know what the industry's like. So they'll get into there and they get trained. They have, all the different support to get these girls so that they can do a good job because it's in their own interest that these girls are earning money.
Do you have an anecdote of, I think there's a studio or maybe more than one studio that popped up near your institute in Cucuta?
Yeah, without a doubt. And, I know so much about this because we've had studio clients that have asked us to go in there and teach their models to speak English. It's a trade English, if you will. They don't necessarily have to speak perfect English, but, definitely helps with the engagement with the user that they can communicate in the same language. So, they're everywhere. And many English teachers or people who speak English have been, connected to the industry one way or another because there's another job there, a monitor they call it, which is basically a person who's chatting for any quantity of models that they have underneath them. It could be 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 models, depending. And what they're basically doing is they're passing off as the model and talking with the user in English, or, sometimes in other languages, the people from other countries don't speak English. And then they're communicating in Spanish to the models what it is they have to do or what it is that the user wants. So there's just there's a huge demand. With the traditional sex trade, I want to say that women, it's a little easier to get out because it's very difficult for them, being in physical contact with all these men, we're having relationships with all these men. But in the webcam industry, there's no physical contact. And the webcam industry, there is no threats of harm per se. Now, that doesn't say that they can't have online bullying or they can't be, victims of things online. But I want to say the woman doesn't have to go to a bar where she's got to interact with men and she doesn't have to physically do that. She can do everything through the camera, just like you're watching this video now. So that's given a comfort zone for many of these women to get into the industry. And then at the same time, it allows them so many freedoms once they're in the industry, if they're able to succeed. Again, not all the women that get into this industry are able to do well, but a lot of them are able to do at least good enough to get by, which is an option that they don't have, we'll say, here in Colombia, if you're a Venezuelan without documentation. So it gives you an option to, hey, this is going to provide me with a living to provide for my family. So it becomes very hard to get out of that because, first of all, it's relatively, and I know this is, perspective, but it's non-invasive because they're just sending pictures or sending videos that they're recording on their phone or doing calls versus having to actually go to a brothel and have sex or whatever with a certain amount of men in a certain period of time. And for them to get out of the industry, when they're going to need a job that's going to provide them with equal or more money, and also that's not going to be as demanding, right? So if you just look at it on a humanistic thing, if you're one of these girls who is able to make money just, turning their phone on and dancing in your room, for a few hours, and then you can spend the rest of your day however you want, and you can get by living on that wage and you're comfortable, it's really hard to get that person to get out of there because, as we know, like people who work in the real world sort of thing, you got to work for your money. So for you to get out of that and work for your money when most of these girls don't have a professional education and the jobs that are available to them aren't going to provide the same luxury or style of life that they have, it's a vicious circle. It's hard for them to get out of.
But as you alluded to, with the lack of physical contact, there's also, it seems like, based on who we've spoken to and what we've heard, that there's less concern about trafficking, pimping, being victims of organized crime within this webcam industry.
Yeah, so it's the business model is different, right? So with the pimping thing, it's very common for women to be lured to come and work under certain pretexts or with certain conditions, and then when they get there, it's totally different, and by that time they're trapped and maybe they take their documents or they're forced to stay there. And so those are the typical trafficking situations where people are lured with with a bait and switch sort of technique. with these girls, the dangers are a little different. The dangers, as I said, they're a lot less physical danger in this business, which makes it easier for a lot of girls to get into it. But the issue here becomes with these girls without having documentation, without having bank accounts or any way to get the money from the different websites or applications that they're working from, and the way that people are like paying for their services online. Then they're forced to pay, third parties or have other, and that's where you see the control of these people. So the model studio, what they'll tend to do there is they will facilitate all of that, and they will pay directly, and they will charge all of the commission. So they'll get their commission off of their payment of the model. They'll get a commission off of the transfer, from dollars to local currency, and they'll probably also get a commission because they were the intermediary that you use to actually download or like transfer the money to a local account. So they have a lot of different ways to kind of like control the models as well. With the girls who don't have experience, what happens is they don't know how to set up an account. They don't know the practices. They don't know the strategies. They don't even know what websites are good and which ones are bad, so to speak. So the agencies will set up their pages, and they're basically, they own their pages. So any audience or any progress that they do over a certain time, if they want to move, if they want to go to another studio, if they want to become independent, they're going to lose everything that they had. So that they're not actually owners of their own content or page or the user that they spent however long time building. So that's kind of the way it works in that sense. It's a little different than the traditional way, but there still is like a vicious circle where it's hard for the girl to really be free and to do what she wants without having to, fight for it.
So there are some parallels, but does it seem like the issue of Venezuelan women being trafficked around here is not as bad as it once was?
Yeah, the flow of people has considerably dropped. So, with that, obviously, then there's less demand here for people. So you look at it like this. We were fishing in a pond with 100 fish. It's easy to get 5, 6, 10 fish out. But if we're fishing in a pond with 10 fish, then we only get 1. So if we're fishing in a pond with very few fish like we are now, with very few Venezuelans that are coming in exodus and looking for better opportunities as they were before and just flooded, there was more people looking for people, like recruiting. Still today, there are still studios every day are looking for models. And these studios every day are doing what they can to try and give incentives to models, to get recommendations, to do all of these things. But they're doing it with a personal interest that they want this person to work for them, to make money, and they'll earn a percentage of that. So there still is a demand for the people to come into that. And as we've heard, what ends up happening is one person gets into it, they start making money, they tell their friend, they say how easy it was, or, per se. And when I say that easy, I mean, it's relative, it doesn't mean to say it was simple, but, it's just as simple as go here, come into this room, dance, take your pants off, take your clothes off, or do whatever this person asks you to do. And it's just through a camera. So they feel a lot less invasive than actually having to physically be with a man. And so they can convince their friends, as we heard, to say, hey, try this. And they're much more willing to get into it. Because, traditional prostitution, there's that stigma. It's like for a woman to get into prostitution, I would believe, I'm not a woman, but I would believe that's a very difficult decision. Have to be dire situations, or, situations that would be really hard for her to decide to do that. Whereas the webcamming industry seems to be a much more attractive offer for the girls, especially in a day like today where they're already used to Instagram and TikTok and making, creating content. This is just like the next step.
So, Mariangel, I've never asked you about this before, but you've indicated that you're willing to talk about it. We just heard from a woman here who is discussing the issue of trafficking and pimping in La Parada, as well as the region on the Colombian side of the border. Has that happened to you? Were you trafficked? Were you pimped? And thank you for speaking on this.
Sí, muchas veces venían y preguntaban que si querían, que ellos pagaban todo, pero Bueno, yo, por ejemplo, yo nunca quise, y con gente conocida menos, nunca me fui por ahí, pero sí llegaban muchos a ofrecer dinero, que nos iba a ir bien, que nos iban a cambiar la vida, pero yo nunca tomé esa decisión de irme.
Okay. Yes, of course. That's absolutely right what she said. I personally witnessed this situation because I was offered the chance to work in other cities by those guys many times, but I never accepted because I didn't know them, so I don't know their intentions. So I decided to stay here and work from here.
Were any of the girls that you were friends with here or worked with here or knew here, were any of them trafficked or pimped? And what happened with that?
Okay.
Sí, unas que otras sí se iban, pero bueno, yo nunca me quise ir, pero sí, sí, algunas de ellas.
Yeah, some of them accepted to go to other cities, to other places, but I never accepted.
Do you know what happened with them?
Okay, ¿sabes qué pasó con ellas? ¿Cómo les fue por allá?
No sé.
No, I don't know. I don't know.
But was this common? Was when you worked here, was it common for girls to be purchased or taken to other cities as in they were?
Era una cosa común, mientras tú estuviste aquí, siempre pasaba eso de que ellas eran llevadas a otros sitios, les ofrecían otros.
Sí, siempre venían, siempre, muchas veces. Más casi todos los días había alguien por ahí ofreciendo para dónde ir, que si para Ecuador, para Chile, fuera de Colombia, y daban pasajes, decían que te iban a pagar extensiones, que te iban a pagar todo, pero no, yo nunca me quise ir.
Yes, that used to happen all the time. I always saw those guys offering them good things, offering them to travel to another countries like Chile or Ecuador, or they offer the girls, they offer them to do their hair or nails. But well, in my case, I never accepted any of those offers.
Do you know if these men were part of gangs? Were they part of any organized criminal groups?
Se escuchaban rumores, pero no se sabe, como no los conocía, pero sí decían que ellos eran malos. Yo nunca decidí irme.
Okay. Yeah, we never know. I never knew for sure, but rumors were heard around here that they were bad guys, but I never knew for sure.
Here in La Parada, right next to the Colombian-Venezuelan border, we are joined by, what's her name?
¿Y cuál es su nombre?
Yaibet Canelón.
Jaibet Canelón.
Thank you for joining us. You have a shop.
Gracias por unirte.
You have a shop here in La Parada.
¿Tienes una tiendita acá en La Parada?
Sí, un puestecito.
Yes, just a little shop here.
And you're a businesswoman from Venezuela?
Y eres una mujer como de negocio, ¿no? Venezolana.
Sí, pues siempre de Venezuela he tenido mi negocio, pues se decayó con la situación y pues una señora me dio la oportunidad de que ella tenía su puesto aquí, se fue y me regaló el puestecito.
Okay. So yeah, sure. I used to have my own business in Venezuela, but due to the crisis, I lost it, and then I decided to come here. And there was another woman with a small business here, with a small shop, and she gave it away to me. So now I have it.
Okay, pues sí, porque yo he vivido en carne propia con otras amistades y muchos inmigrantes como yo que han llegado aquí, pues yo me vine hace 4 años, duré 5 días para llegar aquí, pues llegué a un límite que pues lo pensé porque la señora que me trajo me vendió 2 veces a un finquero, un señor de una finca, me vinieron a buscar y yo me le escapé. Y pues, gracias a mi pareja que yo lo conocí aquí, tuve el apoyo de él, la colaboración de él y pues he ido emprendiendo, no me tocó hacer eso, gracias a Dios, pero me ha tocado duro. a él tanto como a mí no han tocado duro porque él dejó sus 2 niños en Venezuela y yo pues, yo tengo un solo hijo y no hemos querido levantar los dos, pero, okay.
All right. It hasn't been easy, and the situation that you describe is absolutely real. I personally witnessed since I got here because myself, I was offered as merchandise to a farmer from another city. I was sold to him and he was coming for me. He was coming for me and I escaped. I managed to escape from him twice, not once, but twice. Fortunately, I met this guy here. She met this guy here. He helped her a lot. He's now my couple, my partner, and I'm now living with him. But it hasn't been any easy for us to have a decent life here, to escape from that option of prostitution. Fortunately, I never had to do that, but I was just about to have to do it in order to survive.
How did you manage to escape?
Okay. ¿Cómo lograste escapar? Cuéntanos esa parte.
Pues, a la parte de arriba hay un sitio que le dicen Tocorón y ella estaba alquilada por aquella parte y me llamó por teléfono y me dijo que se sentía mal, que fuera a auxiliarla y pues, yo estaba en la tiendita donde ella estaba, en el cuartico. Ella me dijo que me acostara ahí un ratico mientras que ella atendía a una persona porque ella consumía. Y resulta y acontece que llegó una camioneta oscura y entonces ella se acercó a hablar con el señor y le dijo que tenía las 2 muchachas porque éramos 2 muchachas que estábamos ahí engañadas y yo escuché cuando ella le dijo, sí, te tengo las 2 muchachas. Okay. Y pues yo le rompí el hule de la tiendita donde que ella tenía y yo me salí por la parte de atrás y corrí durísimo y llegué al arriendo donde él está porque yo todavía no vivía con él. Yo llegué al arriendo.
All right. Yeah. I remember that day when I first came here. I had a friend who told me that she was needing help. She called me. She asked me to go to her place because she was apparently feeling bad. And once I got there, I got into her room and she told me to wait for her for a moment. She offered me to lay down on her bed and I did so. But then I looked through the window and I could look outside of the house when a dark van approached the house. They parked in front of the house and I heard when they were talking and she said to them, I have the 2 girls ready. I already have the 2 girls ready. They're waiting for you inside the house. So as soon as I heard that, I broke the window and I could escape from through the window. And I immediately went to his room. I didn't know him. That was the first time I saw him, but he helped me. I told him what was going on and he decided to help me.
That sounds very traumatizing.
Eso suena realmente traumatizante.
Sí, pues entonces la segunda vez, ya yo me había ido con él porque él me tuvo que decir, vámonos a mi arriendo para que esté más segura. Y como al tiempito, como al mes, ella puso 5 carros de perro caliente ahí en esa esquina. Y yo venía a la tienda con una amiga. Y ella me dijo que venía el mismo señor a buscarme, que yo tenía que acomodar lugar, pagarle al señor los carros de perro caliente para pues, nosotros poder trabajar, que 2 eran míos y 2 eran de él y de ella y 1 para venderlo. Entonces yo con mi cuerpo pagar esos carros de perro caliente para poder trabajar y yo me impuse, pues yo le dije que no y entonces yo le dije que iba a llamar a la policía porque cuando eso había mucha policía acá. Okay. Y ella se molestó y me amenazó con un cuchillo que tenía en la mano y entonces...
The story that I just told you was just the first time they tried to kidnap me. But then, on the second time, I remember that we had some selling points for hot dog sellings. The woman told me that if I wanted to continue working there, I had to pay that guy. That was the same guy from the first time I told you, from the dark van, and he was demanding from us that if we wanted to continue working over there at that point over there, that there's nothing there anymore, we had to pay with our body. So I had to pay with my body if I wanted to continue working over there, which I rejected. I refused to do so, and I told her that if she continued to molest me, to bother me, I would call the police. So she got mad and she went for a knife and she threatened that she was going to kill me.
Was pimping or trafficking common here in years past, before now?
Común antes sí, antes era común, todavía hace 2 años y medio, pues había una muchacha que era venezolana y ella trabajaba en un centro de prostitución en, ¿cómo que se llama ese sitio? Para Zulia. El sitio el Zulia, para allá donde están
Ella trabajaba allá.
Eso.
Ella trabajaba allá.
Y entonces él reclutó en ese tiempo, reclutó 5 mujeres en mi puesto. Acá.
Déjame que decir eso. In the past, until 2 years and a half, more or less ago, girls were recruited and they were taken inside of the town to a place called Ocaña, after Zulia River. That is like 2 or 3 hours from here. So más o menos 2-3 horas de aquí, ¿verdad? Yeah. Yeah. And I remember the one day, one guy from Ocaña came here and he recruited 5 girls from here and he take them there.
And were these mostly or all Venezuelan girls? Were they very vulnerable because of how poor they were and coming from Venezuela?
Okay. ¿Me puedes hablar un poquito de esas 2 chicas? Ellas eran venezolanas, estaban en condiciones de pobreza, o qué sabías tú más o menos de ellas?
Sí, ellas son venezolanas, pues una se retiró de eso. Ya hoy en día ella, gracias a Dios, tiene su pareja, vive en San Cristóbal. Ya tiene un niño. La otra muchacha sí no supe más de ella. Ella me enteré por la otra muchacha que se pelearon en ese centro. Se dividieron las dos porque eran muy amigas y no sé qué pasó. Se dividieron y la otra se fue para Ecuador. Hasta en estos días ella vino para acá porque ella siempre viene para acá. Ella es mi amiguita.
Déjame decirle. Okay, yeah, I knew them both. I knew the 2 of them. They were Venezuelan. Fortunately, one of them stopped doing that. She went back to Venezuela and she got a couple. She has a couple right now. She has a family. But the other one, I didn't know anything else about her after that.
From your observation, it sounds like you're saying that prostitution is less common now in La Parada and on the Colombian side of the border. Do you have any idea why might that be, and what are you observing that's been taking place with prostitutes and prostitution in La Parada?
Como lo decimos nosotros los venezolanos vulgarmente, ya los hombres, los caballeros, que venían frecuentemente adinerados, la vía alterna, los Estados Unidos, Chile, Panamá, ¿me entiendes? Y entonces ellas se fueron también hacia esos rumbos. Ya no están viniendo para acá.
Yeah. I know the situation. I know the reason. One of the reasons is that those gentlemen that used to come here with money, they're now not coming here anymore. They decided to go to other countries, other cities, but not here anymore. So that is one of the reasons why prostitution has decreased so much and it's almost disappeared right now in this place.
Are these Johns or the gentlemen who come here for prostitutes, they're mostly international men? They're like, are they coming from the United States or where?
Okay.
Pues que yo recuerde dónde eran personas que tenían su buenos negocios aquí, su buen empleo. Entonces, ellos venían, como quien dice, acá, ahí, donde está esa casa de alimentos para animales, eso era un tomadero, como el de aquel.
Okay.
Y entonces ellos venían, tomaban en estos sitios, y entonces ahí donde, por lo menos, eso, por lo menos a través de otras personas, de segunda persona, mira, tiene amigas por ahí, entonces sí, iban y se la buscaban, mira, te van a pagar tanto. Claro, yo también, aparte de ellos ganaban algo.
Yeah, they were, some of them were foreigners, some of them, many of them were locals who just had a business here in La Parada. They make good money. So they came to this point over here, this place where you can see food for animals, for pets. That used to be a pub where they gather together at night. And some of the guys came here offering the girls' services. So the girls didn't approach personally. There were other guys offering the girls, making deals directly with the gentlemen who were interested in the services, and they established the connection between the girls and the clients.
And what about the girls? I'm aware that there have been many poor Venezuelan girls who have come here in the past. Have they gotten help, some of them? Have they moved on to other places, returned to Venezuela? And are there still girls working here?
Okay.
Working here as prostitutes?
Yeah, okay.
Pues, como vuelvo y repito, la mayoría se han ido, pero sí, hay algunas que están practicando, porque para ella la vía alterna, discretamente, son la vía alterna que ella tiene, porque como igual aquí la cosa está difícil, el empleo, porque hay personas que no sacaron el PPT acá en Colombia, el permiso permanente, y no pueden trabajar formalmente. Entonces es la vía alterna que han tenido muchas, sí quedan por acá, pocas sí, algunas que quedan por ahí, algunas que conozco, algunas que cuando me dicen me sorprendo que.
So I do know that some of them have decided to move to other cities. Some other have decided to come back to Venezuela, but a few of them, a very few amount of them, have continued discreetly.
Yes,
Discreetly to continue doing that. But now they do it because the situation here is very difficult right now, economically speaking. So they have decided to continue doing that, but on their own, and because of the situation. There's a huge difference between 3 years ago and now. The ones who are still here have decided not to offer their services so openly, so publicly. They even approach me here, and they asked me discreetly if I know someone who might be interested in her services.
This is a very difficult subject, and you've been very gracious with us in sharing. Is there anything else that you would like to say about this topic? I know it's affected you personally.
Okay.
Whether it's a personal sentiment you'd like to share or anything about this issue as a whole.
Yeah.
Pues, yo aprovecho para tratar un casito que tengo personal, pero, o sea, allá en Venezuela, que yo no he podido concretar acá, porque la situación no me da. Porque ahorita estoy viviendo es el día a día. Esto como ha quedado muy solo, ya no me dan las cuentas, como quien dice, sino para el día a día, para el diario, para comer al diario. Entonces, pues, cuando yo me vine, se metieron en mi apartamento allá en Venezuela, que el apartamento me lo dio el gobierno. Y me quemaron el apartamento por dentro y me quemaron todo. Se me robaron y aprovecharon y dejaron esa maldad pues para que no supieran quién se metió y perdí todo. Me partieron las ventanas, los vidrios, yo vivo en planta, mi apartamento es en planta y pues aprovechando sí una mano amiga, porque los vidrios están caros, pues están carísimos. Y pues bueno, cualquier cosa que me puedan colaborar, porque mi mamá vivía allá, pero ella me vive llamando que ella se siente incómoda porque el apartamento queda en planta y allá a veces la inseguridad es dura. Y pues para ver,
Como también como a
para reconstruir por eso, para ponerle eso y poner protección. Sí, porque yo quedé sin nada, sin cama, sin cocina, sin nada, porque todos me lo quemaron, todos se me quemaron.
Okay. I would like to say something else, and it is a personal situation that I've been going through all this time. I used to have my own house in Venezuela. I used to have an apartment. Well, I still have it, but I faced a terrible situation some time ago. Since I left my home for a period of time alone, they saw that there was nobody living in my apartment. They decided to break into my apartment. Some gangs, I don't know, some criminals, they robbed everything from my house and they set my house in fire. And I lost everything. They destroyed my house completely. I lost everything, my beds, my clothes, everything I had there. So now if I wanted to come back to Venezuela, I don't have a place where to go because what used to be my apartment is now completely destroyed. So I would appreciate if anyone that is watching this could give me a hand, give me some help in order for me to be able to rebuild my house in Venezuela. I would be very, very grateful.
I'm very sorry to hear about that.
Lamento mucho escuchar eso.
That is a terrible, terrible situation that
Es
you're
una situación realmente terrible de escuchar.
in La Parada, Colombia, right next to the bridge right beside the Venezuelan-Colombian border. We're joined by a young lady or girl. Can you please introduce yourself a little?
Ok, hola, bueno, estamos acá en la frontera entre Colombia y Venezuela, junto con una amiga venezolana que está del lado colombiano. Puedes presentarte, por favor, decir, pues, si quieres decir otro nombre, no importa, y de dónde eres.
Bueno, primeramente a mí me dicen la Chiva. Pues soy de Venezuela, de Ciudad Maracay. Estoy viviendo ahorita actualmente en la invasión de mis pequeñas barinas, del lado de San Antonio del Táchira.
Okay. They call me La China, okay, the Chinese translation in English. Right now I'm living near between Barinas and San Antonio del Táchira, which is very close from here. And that's it.
Okay, so you're living on the Venezuelan side of the border, right somewhere over there in the San Antonio area. Do you come to Colombia often, and what do you do when you come to Colombia?
Okay, entonces estás viviendo actualmente del lado de Venezuela y ¿con qué frecuencia vienes para acá, para Colombia?
Vengo aproximadamente como días de por medio. Vengo que sí para comprar material alimenticio como comida, cosas personales y a vender cosas como celulares ya dañados para poder ayudarme a mí y a mi hermano.
Okay. So I don't come very often. I just come sometimes in order to get food, some goods, groceries. And sometimes I come with broken cell phones and I sell them here in order to try to get a little bit of money to buy food for my family.
You're in school, in something like high school in Venezuela. Is that what it is?
Okay. Estás
And can you share how old you are, if
Okay.
that's all right?
Yeah. estás en el liceo, tu hermano está en el liceo. ¿Puedes decirnos qué edad tienes?
Yo tengo 16 años y mi hermano tiene 17, va para 18 años.
Okay. ¿Y estás estudiando en el liceo, los dos?
Yo estoy estudiando en el liceo y mi hermano ya está tomando carrera en a una institución donde se hacen cursos para agarrar alguna carrera, pero él no está haciendo un curso, sino ya está estudiando tipo como universidad.
Yeah, I'm 16, about to turn 17. My brother is 17, about to turn 18. And I'm now studying at the high school, but my brother is studying at a college.
We've spoken to quite a few girls in the past here in La Parada, Venezuelan girls who have been in very difficult situations. Some have resorted to selling their bodies in order to make money and send money to their families. If you're willing to share, is that something that you've ever had to do?
Ok. Entre tanto tiempo que hemos venido para acá a hacer entrevistas, hemos entrevistado tantas cantidades de personas, entre ellas chicas, que nos han contado que se han visto forzadas por la situación económica a vender sus cuerpos y ofrecer servicios a hombres para hacer dinero y sobre todo para ayudar a sus familias. Si tú estarías dispuesta, ¿podrías compartirnos si te ha tocado a ti hacer algo como eso?
Pues sí, en pocas ocasiones me ha tocado hacerlo forzado por la situación económica que tenemos en casa y por el problema de salud que está ahorita mi mamá, o sea, el problema de salud que tiene mi mamá ahorita, pues me he visto forzada para ayudar a mi mamá y a mis hermanos, ya que tengo 2 hermanos acá, uno en Medellín, pero el de Medellín no nos ayuda casi.
Okay. Yes, of course, I've had to do this just a couple of times because of the economic situation that has forced us to find other ways to make money, and also because of the health situation that my mom is going through right now. She's very sick right now, so we somehow have to find the money to help her with the medicines and therapies. So that's the main reason why I've had to do this.
And is that something you do here in La Parada, or is it something you do elsewhere?
Okay, y cuando te ha tocado hacer eso, pues lo has tenido que hacer acá en La Parada o en algún otro lugar.
Pues en San Antonio me ha tocado y me ha tocado también aquí en La Parada, no, pero en Cúcuta sí.
Okay. And I've had to do that not only here in Cucuta, but also in Venezuela around the place where I'm living at right now.
Is this still common for girls, Venezuelan girls, to do in La Parada and on the Colombian side of the border, or in the Venezuelan side for that matter?
Okay, esta actividad es común tanto acá en La Parada o aquí en Cúcuta, como también en Venezuela. ¿Has visto tú otras chicas que también hayan tenido que hacer cosas como esas para hacer dinero?
Pues sí, en Cúcuta hay demasiados. Y aquí en San Antonio, pues no he visto muchas, sí he visto pocas, pero no muchas. Y pues con la que yo sé que sí, fue con la que me sacó o sea, me llevó para Cúcuta y pues con ella fue que me impulsó a hacer eso, más con la situación que tenemos en casa.
Okay. I haven't seen too many people in Venezuela doing that, just a few of them. But in Cucuta, I know there are too many of them doing that. My friend from Venezuela, she was the one who took me here to Cucuta, and she was the one who pushed me to do that in Cucuta.
So it's much more common now for girls, particularly Venezuelan girls, to sell their bodies in Cucuta than it is in La Parada?
Okay. Sí, conozco que pues Cúcuta siempre ha sido famosa por ser una ciudad un poquito como medio oscura. Pero ¿podrías tú decir entonces que este tipo de actividades la realizan más allá en Cúcuta que acá en La Parada?
Sí, se ve más en Cúcuta que aquí en La Parada. Aquí en La Parada se ve, pero cada quien como encerradito en su casa. En Cúcuta cada quien se sienta o se pone en una esquina a esperar a que le lleguen.
Okay. Yeah, of course. In Cucuta, this is much more common than here. The girls here are more discreet. They offer their services discreetly, but in Cucuta, they just stand up on a corner and offer their services to people.
Is this something I know it's very sad, and I'm sorry you've had to go through this, but is this something that you did willingly, or were you trafficked? Meaning, did
No.
someone force you into it, or were you
Ok, bueno,
pimp you into this?
ok. Es un tema, de verdad, yo entiendo que es un poquito difícil para ti hablar, pero quisiera saber si esta cosa que tuviste que hacer fue de manera forzada por alguien te forzó a hacerlo, o tú lo hiciste por voluntad propia debido a la situación económica.
No, pues nadie me forzó a nada. Yo simplemente lo hice porque necesitaba ayudar a mi mamá y ver a mi mamá en la situación que estaba me duele porque por más que sea, ella siempre dio todo por nosotros.
Okay, no, I wasn't forced by anyone. I did it voluntarily because of the economic situation and the health situation of my mom.
What about other girls around here you know who are doing this? Are they doing this voluntarily, or are they being trafficked, or is it some sort of combination?
¿Conoces alguna de las chicas que estén haciendo esas cosas acá y sabes si de pronto a ellas sí las han forzado a hacer algo así o si ellas también lo han hecho de manera voluntaria?
Solo conozco a una que es a mi amiga y pues ella lo hace por manera voluntaria.
I only know one of them, which is my friend, and she does it voluntarily.
I'm very sorry that you have to go through this situation. It's very sad. Is there anything that you would like to share, or any request for help that you would like to make, or is there anything that you'd like to talk about, whether it's your personal situation or the larger situation here around the Venezuelan-Colombian
Okay.
border?
Lamento profundamente la situación por la que has tenido que pasar tú y tu familia. ¿Hay algo de pronto, alguna petición que quieras hacer de ayuda para resolver tus asuntos personales y familiares?
Pues la ayuda que yo quisiera pedir así es simplemente le pido ayuda a Dios para que me mejore mi mamá.
Okay. ¿Y económicamente, de pronto te gustaría que alguien te ayudara económicamente para resolver esos asuntos?
Económicamente, si alguien me quiere ayudar, pues con mucho gusto le voy a recibir su ayuda, de lo que sea, porque de verdad que la necesito, pero es complicado, complicado.
Déjame decir eso. Okay, firstly, the main help that I need is from God. I need God to help my mom survive this situation. And secondly, if anyone would like to help me economically speaking, of course, I will accept it. And thank you very much in advance.
Last time I was here in La Parada, about 5 years ago, a little more than that, there were thousands of Venezuelans crossing into Colombia daily, maybe even tens of thousands.
Yeah, there were.
I think you might have estimated like
I think there was
30 or
40,000
40,000.
a day.
Yeah. And most of those people were heading back into Venezuela on the same day, right?
Yeah, they're called pendulum people, which they were coming from the interior of Venezuela or maybe from the border area here, and they would come for goods or services that they couldn't get there. They'd come here to reclaim Western Union money transfers because you can't get dollars there. So people from outside that are sending money to help their families in Venezuela, they'd come here for medicine because there were no medicine, no Tylenol, no simple things, gauze pads for hospitals, just really simple things. There was huge shortages all across Venezuela. So there were just people like every day, different people coming and going. But with that number, there was a huge percentage of 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people a day that were coming here. And those people were then displacing within Colombia. So here in Cucuta, others Bucaramanga, Medellin, Bogota, basically the migrants that now, you are found all across not only Colombia, but South America and all the rest of the world.
But now La Parada is much calmer, less chaotic. Seems like there are far fewer people here.
Yeah.
Granted, right now it's a Sunday. We're filming this when all the shops are closed on a Sunday. But why is it that the population of La Parada is much lower right now, and in general it seems much less chaotic here?
Well, in general, the situation in Venezuela, we're not going to talk about it like that. What happened last week. So the situation in Venezuela has stabilized, the economic situation, meaning since that time, the dollar they've dollarized the economy in basically the whole country. They've also been able to stabilize some of the imports and exports so that, you know, some of these basic needs are being met. They're not all, but, you know, they're able to adjust over there and live under those conditions. So with that, what's allowed for the people is to basically, those who left looking for better opportunities have already gone, and those who are there kind of like, all right, you know what, we were able to weather the storm. So there's still a constant flow, but it's much more like it's something that's a lot more easier to manage here.
And just to be clear about the date, you're referring to past several years, I presume, in the lead up to Maduro's capture. There's nothing to do with Maduro's.
Yeah, nothing. We were prepared here. Like they were prepared in case there was going to be a big influx of migrants, depending on how that went down. But fortunately for the way it went down, it was just a normal day here the next day. So yeah, this was over the last couple of years, as they were able to in Venezuela kind of mitigate the financial issues of the everyday Colombians, or Venezuelans, so that they could at least get by, because we're talking about like people that were suffering for very basic supplies and services, to people who are now, okay, if it's only, you know, they have water every couple of days, or if it's only the lights go out every now and then, you know, they can deal with that. But it's really hard when, you know, you have that, plus you don't, you know, inflation, plus you don't have enough money for food, plus, you know, there's no medicine, plus there, you know, when you add all these things up, it's a compound effect that just makes it unlivable for them. So they were able to mitigate some of those things. So it was at least more livable for the people that are there, but the people who live there will still tell you it's not, nothing's perfect. And, you know, they're just basically making the best with the situation.
So as you say, the economic situation had stabilized to a large extent in Venezuela in recent years, and you say that's the main reason why the population and the chaos have dwindled here in La Parada.
Yeah, so, you know, in general, when we talk with the people that come here, and, you know, you see the influx and stuff like that of people, you know, you're going to see that a lot of the people that are coming now are coming because, again, they've got to their limit. They've got to a point of an unbreakable point where they say, no, it's not livable. I need to go somewhere else. But in general, the people, what they've been able to do is find that balance, you know, saying it's really hard for a Venezuelan to migrate as well, because they're getting, a lot of them, especially the ones who are still there, a lot of them are there because they don't have another option. Like they don't have family where they can go somewhere else, or they have very limited options, and plus they don't have savings or money. So to go on, you know, to pay for flights to be able to financially, you know, get stable in another country without a guarantee of a job or something like that. Those are a lot of uncertainties that keep a lot of the Venezuelans there, but a lot of them too still come here, try to get something done, or get up and do something, or they're just looking for different ways to get by, because over there you can't just survive off of a single income. Traffic in general. But there is another element that's important about here, specifically in La Parada, and that is that the Colombian police came in because at one point in time, the Venezuelans, like we'll say, as a comparison, like the Tren del Agua in the United States, where you started to see like these people were starting to take over certain areas. So the Venezuelans were taking over this area. They were just everywhere, and it became very difficult for people in general to manage. So the National Guard and the police came in, and they basically like put law and order here so that it was a bit more organized. That caused some uproar at first with the people, but fortunately after that, you know, it kind of normalized things so that, you know, it was a little more orderly, plus the lower influx of people it just makes it seem, like you said, like you can just tell that there's a different feeling here than there was in the past.
And were Tren de Aragua and other organized criminal groups operating here in La Parada? I know that they're
all over
very involved in the trochas, but
yeah,
what might they have been doing here, or still doing?
They're here. They're absolutely here. It's territorial dispute. So the thing is, what they're doing is they control the illegal drug trade. Catatumbo is a zone here that is famously known as one of the hubs for production of coca in Colombia. So with that, we're talking about that product is then being shipped and over into Venezuela, and then from Venezuela trafficked to different parts of the world. And in this case, they're the ones who control the drug routes, and they're the ones that are in cahoots with the Venezuelan guard. And they obviously have presence in Venezuela. And it's not a secret that the Venezuelan government, just like what they did with the FARC, that they work in cahoots with them. So they're protected by, in a way over there. And then they're also protecting not only their drug routes, but also any other illicit activity, there's a lot of extortion that's done here. So calling up business owners or people that they know they have money, or kidnapping people. They do a lot of that as well. Kidnapping and then asking for ransom for different people. A very famous case. I don't believe it was Tren del Agua, but it was either them or the FARC. I have to do a fact check on that. But a very famous soccer player, Luis Diaz, who played for Liverpool at the time, he's Colombian, and his dad was kidnapped famously, and he's a famous player living and playing in the English soccer league, and his father got kidnapped here, and they held him for ransom for money. So that happens on with the big people, and it happens with the little people as well, where if they see somebody's got any sum of money, or that they could be a possible target for that, they'll kidnap them and then hold them for ransom. And that's just, along with the illicit drug trade, it's one of their sources of income.
In our conversation about the drug trafficking and the routes, that sometimes there could be a shakedown at the border. For instance, if someone is not one of them per se on the Venezuelan side, well, what about the regular people going across the border in both directions? People aren't drug traffickers. I've heard in the past from Venezuelans coming in here that they might have to pay the guards, Venezuelan National Guard at the border, or back when the bridge wasn't open, if they're crossing the Trochas, they might have to pay some criminal groups money just to pass. What happens at the border, and are regular people getting shaken down?
Yes. So all of that depends on many different factors, but everything you said is true. Well, the border is open and there's flow. Anybody taking any illegal things or just every day going across can cross right across the border without any issues. When you go over to the Venezuelan side, you're always exposed to, if they choose to shake you down or not. That is a constant threat. And that goes, if you came here to go shopping and they open up your bag just randomly, say, hey, you come over here. They might just look at you and think that you look like you have money. So they're going to pressure you by, telling you they're going to do or say, take this, or you're not allowed to have this, or you got to pay for that. And if you don't, then this. So they're very corrupt. The Venezuelan guard are very corrupt. So people going across, just regular or everyday people, are always at risk that, what they have could be either confiscated, or it could be used to extort them, for them to have to pay any sum of money, depending on how much or how little, how valuable their things are. Now, when the border itself is not open, due to political reasons, it could be an election, it could be to the bilateral problems that the countries have had, or just because the people have, for example, they want to cross with something that they can't get across the border, or people that don't have documents like for their kids, and they don't want to be bothered, so they can come across relatively easy through the trocha. But when you're there, you're exposed to exactly what you said. If there's somebody there, they'll stop you. Very, very likely they'll stop you and say you need to pay in order to cross. And people obviously pay it because they don't want to have any problems. There's also many cases of robberies. I've physically witnessed robberies in there. I've watched people get their cell phones stolen. I've seen how they work in groups, one keeping an eye over here, another one keeping an eye over here, another guy coming in doing his dirty work, and so forth. So it is something that exists. There is a danger to going across the trochas. Doesn't mean to say that, every time you go across, something bad's going to happen, but there's definitely a chance.
Having spent a week here on and around the border, there is certainly a sense of hope among many Venezuelans. Undeniably, based on my interactions, that has something to do with the capture of Nicolas Maduro and the change in what's taking place in the governance of Venezuela. And then also walking around La Parada, it's very clear that it is less crowded, less chaotic than it was when I was here last. And there are certainly fewer Venezuelan girls and women who are walking the streets here and selling their bodies. But that doesn't mean that the situation has
Todo bien, papá.
clearly improved and that the underworld and the organized crime and the overall sex trade has dissipated here. That's definitely not the case. There has been somewhat of a migration of Venezuelan girls and women who are working as sex workers from La Parada to Cucuta, specifically the center of Cucuta. And then simultaneously, as we've documented, many of these Venezuelan girls who are desperately in need of money are choosing to do not traditional sex work, but a new form of sex work, which is webcam modeling and everything related to those types of apps and the online sex trade. So, yes, in a sense, there is hope. The craziness of La Parada that I saw 5 or 6 years ago does not exist in early 2026, and there aren't as many of these Venezuelan girls in dire situations physically selling themselves on the street, but by no means have Venezuelan girls and women stopped or escaped that lifestyle and the sex trade as a whole. And the organized crime very much remains. Over the past week, I've heard plenty about the drug trafficking and the criminal groups who certainly remain pervasive in this area. But indeed, there is a sense of stability, and as one elderly gentleman expressed very well on the bridge behind me, to some, the fear is over. So there is certainly some hope for the future, but far from an ideal situation here on the Colombian side of the Colombian-Venezuelan border. And specifically, there are many Venezuelan girls and women who remain in very difficult predicaments. Thank you very much for tuning in. It's been a quite enlightening week that I've spent here, and stay tuned for future coverage from on and around the Venezuelan-Colombian border.